Hello and welcome to Tower Talk, vital conversations from Prospect Park United Methodist Church. I'm Dave Nyberg. These programs are designed to take a look at the issues of the day through the lens of members of the Prospect Park UMC congregation and members of the public at large. It's our pleasure for this program to have Sam Velasquez, a seventh grade math teacher at Franklin Middle School, joining us for this conversation. Sam, welcome to the program.
Hi.
Great to have you here, Sam. So I guess it goes without saying, this year's back to school timeframe is going to look a whole lot different than last year's back to school timeframe. In just kind of in a nutshell, talk a little bit about the preparations for this school year and what you see ahead.
So honestly, last year I was kind of looking forward to kind of just kind of going through your same old routines. We kind of, when we start off the year, we like setting things up for our kids, kind of get them accustomed to the routines. When you're off from school for 3 months, you're kind of like, I need to get back into school mode. So I know at least for our seventh grade team, even though they are like, I guess, preteens or we consider them kind of almost adults or young adults a lot of times, we do need to put them through kind of a schedule and really get them accustomed to what we're doing at school. So we spend a ton of time setting up kind of our daily routines within our classrooms. So we'll do kind of like a bunch of get to know you games and kind of little assignments that seem not super important, but really are teaching them how to turn in assignments, how to do homework, how to communicate, proficiently or communicate sophisticatedly with the other students at their table. This year, though, it's going to be interesting, honestly. We just started today, even going through kind of how we're going to do this as an online format. And so we're going to be doing everything virtually, and we're going to try to be doing what we call a synchronous learning format, meaning we're still going to hold classes 1 through 6 throughout the day, but we're going to try to figure out a way that we can be able to teach a class virtually online with all of our kids in our class for the day, and then kind of just move on to the next class and figure that out. So it's kind of it's very much a learning curve right now.
So. Sam, you described last year in a quote unquote normal school year, where you would have the opportunity to be in the classroom together and you have those activities for the students to get together and really become, acquainted with each other. How important is that?
So we, our principal, because we have a very particular group of kids in Franklin Middle School. We're in the north side of Minneapolis. A lot of our students have struggled with school in the past. A lot of our students just come from high trauma, not only maybe high trauma at home, but just kind of a legacy of trauma just from the community that is North Minneapolis. And it's not something that I don't think our students can't overcome. They are some of the most resilient students I've ever met in my life, some of the most resilient people I've ever met. But it is something that you have to give them the time they need to be able to work to get back into school. So our principal always says, you know what, try to stay away from teaching content the first 2 weeks. Just do your best to stay away from it. And if you are going to teach it, move very slowly into it. So what I like to do is a bunch of little activities. One of the activities I actually start with on like the first couple of days is it's called like Know Me by the Numbers. So the thing I do, since I'm a math teacher, I come up with a bunch of different numbers that describe me in my life. So I will, like, an example I'll put down like 651. Now I'm going to put down 940. I have, what's another one? Oh, like 54 and like different numbers like that. And they kind of sound like random numbers, but what the kids have to do is kind of think about how that might describe me. Okay. And so they'll go through and they come up like with lists or just different options of how that describes me. And after they kind of have a little bit of time to think about it, then I actually show them all the answers and I have them try to match up with the correct spot. And they kind of do a lot of like mathematical thinking, but at the same time, they're learning a little bit more about myself. And also, since they're working at tables and with others, they're able to kind of discuss and kind of be like, oh yeah, like, oh, that would make sense. 2 dogs. Oh, if he has 2 dogs here, that would make sense. And it gives them the opportunity too to share with one another. Like, oh, I have dogs. That's funny. He has dogs. And so it's, I don't know. It's been a really good activity in the past to do things like that. So, yeah, this year though, it will definitely be different. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can still incorporate an activity like that. The problem with it is I don't know if I will be able to do as much like group activity. It might just be kind of solo type thing or one-on-one working with kids, but that's something I'm developing as of right now.
You're very much in a position, as with your colleagues, of having to adjust to the individual situations. I mean, you do that every day in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Now with the there's also the technology part of it that's also that put in there that's between you and the students on a day-to-day basis, and how to make use of the technology. The idea of being in the classroom together and having that in-person experience, and now you're having an in-person experience, only it's through a computer screen.
And it's interesting because how I do things already in the classroom is I use a ton of technology. So, and because I'm always using my computer, and when I do notes, like a lot of times when you think of a math classroom, and a lot of us, even me, when I think of a math classroom, I'm thinking of like a professor or a teacher at a board, a whiteboard, or even Blackboard writing down notes on the board and students taking notes that way. But I don't necessarily do notes like that anymore. I actually do most of it as an online, or a lot of times like a digital, slideshow. So I have a slideshow that I can go through and still be able to edit and change. And so I do most of that online. And what I was doing last year is, instead of doing that to a group of students like online, I would actually record the video, and then they would just watch my little tutorial on what they were learning for the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Last spring, early spring, going through that incredible change that all of us made, and no one more impacted than teachers. What was that like for you? Did you went from a situation, an environment where you're in the classroom, and then just in a matter of days, everything has to be done online? Yeah.
So this is going to sound, I guess, a tiny bit selfish, but at I guess we would say in March, towards the end of March, I was really excited because we had been working, just as a class, we'd been working really, really hard all together, the students, myself, and we had all been putting in extra effort to have really high MCA scores. So our students have kind of been known to have low MCA scores or not been putting in the effort needed to be able to do that. And this year, for whatever it was, a bunch of the students were starting to like click with like, hey, this is important. I really want to put in the effort. I really want to start being able to be more attentive. I really want to learn these skills. I really want to be good at this. And so I was kind of looking forward to seeing how that would actually end up in the spring when we took our MCAs. So when it came March and everybody was kind of like, oh, everything's shutting down, I was kind of a little bit like, well, our MCA is going to happen. And it ended up kind of being like, nope, no MCAs. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of a relief. But at the same time, I was like, oh, well, I can't really show the progress that a lot of these students made. And sometimes that's kind of like the prize at the end of the day, that you're able to show what you've done. Yeah. So I kind of had to change my mindset and kind of just be like, make it as applicable as possible for the students now. because I'm not trying to make sure they know some sort of skill. I'm instead now just trying to teach them positive things. So what I switched my whole curriculum from is originally I had to be teaching linear equations and being able to graph and being able to kind of plot points. And we've already been doing that most of the year. But at this point, it was just like a little bit more advanced and just a little bit extra effort in that area. And I kind of felt, just in my perspective, that none of that really mattered enough to them. It wasn't something that they were super engaged with, super like, I want to learn more about this, because it really doesn't apply to yourself very much unless you go to higher level math.
Right.
And so what I decided to do is I kind of switched everything around, and I kind of I started creating my own curriculum for financial literacy. So I started talking about budgets. I started pulling up videos about like buying shoes and how to do it affordably, and how to talking about percentages on when you're or percentages with just buying things at stores, and like what's the better deal. And we kind of just started really diving deep into that. And I think I got a lot more students to start really picking up on and wanting to do that more. It sucked a little bit because I thought I would be able to get a lot more engagement, but I got just those who were already engaged a little bit more. So
to go in a different direction, seeing that one approach wasn't working, here's an opportunity to try something different.
Yeah.
How did your students respond to all the changes that you were going through last spring?
So our student population, I think at that point, it was kind of like we had like a 50-50 batch. So we had about 50% that kind of just gave up, and they were kind of just like, I'm done with school now. We're out of school. So I'm not going to be doing anything. Since I'm not in school, I'm just not going to do anything. And I had about 50% that were like, well, I'm at home. My family wants me to be engaged in school, so I'm going to keep being engaged in school. And so they kind of went along with it. And at the time, I thought that was kind of just my school's thing. Like, I thought that was just our student body that was doing that. But as I started talking to other school districts all over the world, even, and some of the pages Facebook pages I'm in, groups in that I'm in, everybody was having problems. People in Texas, Florida, like all over the country were having that kind of same feeling that their kids weren't doing anything, or at least half of their population wasn't really engaged in it. And so I think what happened was that a lot of them kind of given up, and kind of rightfully so, because it kind of went from being like really engaged in school, really kind of motivated, to kind of push off to the summer, and then they kind of got an early summer break. So to me, I kind of was like, all right, that kind of makes sense, that a lot of our student body were, you know what, I'm done with the school year. So, yeah.
So speaking of transitions and looking at what last spring brought, certainly technology was a big piece of whether transitions were successful or not. Talk a little bit about that and the kind of challenges that your students were facing.
Yeah, so the biggest issue that we had, at least as actually the whole district of Minneapolis, was that we did not have technology ready for every student, like off the bat. So in St. Paul, they're one-to-one district, meaning that every student in the district has a device to have at home. And I think it's mainly having an iPad. Some people, I think if you're a younger student, you have more of like a heavy-duty Chromebook that parents usually use with their kid at home. But if you're in middle school all the way to high school, every single student has their own iPad that they bring home, and they are able to do all their assignments on. Minneapolis does not have that yet, but they are kind of one-to-one, meaning we have enough devices to be able for every student to have their own in the district. The problem was that right when we went to lockdown, no student had their own device. So what we had to do is kind of as a school, as a district, is they had to start shipping out the Chromebooks to each student in the district. And what they did is they actually used school buses with meal plans, or like with meals. So while they were delivering meals to families, they also were delivering Chromebooks. And so it actually ended up being, after like, I would say 2 or 3 weeks, most students got a Chromebook. So probably about 75 to 80% of students had a Chromebook after about 3 weeks. The nice part was that since we had gone on like lockdown, they had just said in general, like no school for, I think it was 3 weeks. So there was no school at all whatsoever for 3 weeks. And then when we came back after that 3rd week, that's when most of our students had already had their Chromebooks. So we were able to start with at least like 70 to 80% of our students having Chromebooks. But after a few days, we got more, and eventually all of our students now to start off the school year, I'm pretty sure almost 90 to 100% have a Chromebook ready to go. So that's on a positive note. The negative thing though is that we do have to deal with internet access. So Minneapolis is nice that they do provide a little bit more affordable internet services sometimes in certain areas. If you're in a little bit lower, if you're on a little bit lower income, you can have a little bit more possibilities for internet, but still not everybody has the most perfect internet, especially if you have like 3 or 4 people using the same access. So
Sam, what kind of lessons do you that came from last spring? What do you expect to take with you into this fall for the new school year? Whether you want to call it lessons or experiences that you had last spring that you'll take with you into the new school year.
Yeah, so I think last year what was happening to me is, because we went on this break, I was thinking like, okay, well, since we're on break and everybody's at home, everybody can be a little bit more independent, right? And so I was thinking, all right, I'm gonna make all my lessons tailored so that students can do what they need to do independently. They don't need to rely on me as much. They can just work at their own pace, and they can get done what needs to be done by this due date. And for some students that worked really well, other students it didn't work at all. So it actually made me kind of realize that like the students, especially middle school students, because of the social aspect, they really need that face-to-face interaction every day of some kind, whether it just be on a Chromebook or whether it just be virtually or just an email or something, so that we can be able to interact some way every day. And so this year, what I'm going to do instead of last year is that I am going to have, obviously, like I talked about earlier, synchronous classroom where I teach in every single class, and kind of do some sort of interaction with the students every day. So I'm still going to take a little bit from last year as well. So last year I did a lot of videos. And I think instead of me kind of doing a lecture while being, I guess, on camera, I'm going to record it first and then allow the student the time they need in class to watch the video and then do their own assignment. So
Fabulous. Sam, your school is located in a part of the city where we experienced violence, civic unrest and violence late May, early June. What kind of impact did you see that have on the students?
Yeah, so that was a hard thing, because I know it really affected my community, or that community in North Minneapolis, because there had actually been a few riots, like literally down this block from our school. So actually, the Cub Foods that I would go to a lot during my lunch breaks, kind of actually got kind of ransacked, and I don't know if it burned down, but it had a small fire in it, so it was shut down for a while. And it's a big problem for that community because that's kind of where everybody gets their groceries and everybody was going in order to just have their meals for every night. And so for what our school is doing and a lot of community members were doing, we're setting up food drives, and it really made people unsettled in that area. And I wouldn't necessarily say scared, but just it was another thing they had to worry about. Mm-hmm. And I think it just really was something that it made me a little bit more concerned for my students. I know at that point as well, I started seeing a lot more of my students kind of disengaging from the activities that I was planning. So I could tell that it was affecting them pretty greatly. So, yeah.
I would imagine the school served as a support place.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. I know one of our actually our artist or our art teacher is actually a huge artist, and she decided she's a very strong civil rights activist as well, just in the community, and she participates in all types of things to be able to involve civil rights. And so she actually had created a bunch of murals that as students would come by the school, they could actually come and so she kind of set it up in like different days of the week. And when students would come up or like pass by, or if they were there for whatever reason, she provided them artist space for them to be able to paint and help kind of create these amazing murals, not only for our school, but just for Minneapolis as well. So I think she has them up in a couple libraries in North Minneapolis, and also in just down Broadway, and I think on the street. I think she made them so they could be outside too. So it was really cool. Some of the drawings she had paintings and drawings.
Yeah.
So
I have a couple of final questions for you. Number one, why teach? What drew you to education?
So for me, I had this conversation actually with my parents the other day, that both my parents have very distinct philosophies on what you do with your life sometimes. My dad a lot of times is more of the practical member. He's kind of like, you need to get something that's going to be able to make you, like, maybe not make you money, but that you're going to be successful, that you're going to be taken care of, and that you're not going to be worried all the time about where you're going to get your next meal. My mom is kind of like, well, you need to find something that you're really going to enjoy, but also be able to feel like you feel accomplished, or you're doing something good for the world. So I kind of took both of those elements and put them together, and I guess in this career. So the math aspect always kind of drew me, and I knew that math always kind of relates to technology and big things. And but at the same time, in a lot of my math classes that I took, I kind of was losing that social element to it. I was losing that element to be able to connect with people and work with people. And not that you can't do that in the math environment, but it was just a little bit different. It wasn't as, I guess you would say, like, I don't know, it didn't feel as social. It felt more kind of just, you're just doing numbers and working through problems, and it didn't feel like I was really learning anything from anybody in terms of who they were as a person. Mm-hmm. Whereas education, I felt like I could really kind of teach somebody, especially in a subject that's so difficult for everybody. Even people who are good at math are like, oh, I'm bad at math. Yes. I felt like it would be a good place for me to be able to help those people, at least if they're not good at it, be able to feel comfortable with it and be able to be like, okay, I can work through whatever problem it may be. And I knew too, I had a lot of friends. I say this a lot too, that in middle school, I had a lot of like knucklehead friends. So like friends that would mess around, but were really smart people. And because they were really smart, but they just didn't have the right, I guess, motivator or right person there to push them in the right direction, I felt like they missed out on a lot of the math content, at least in school. So I felt like I really want to be that person to also be able to help someone like that who maybe not be as motivated in math, but kind of learn how you can take math and really make it applicable to yourself. So, yeah. It really is what made me kind of feel like it was the right place for me, kind of taking those two sides and kind of putting them together and making it not only practical, but also making it worthwhile and feel, I guess, rewarding. I don't know if rewarding is the right word, but feeling meaningful.
Well, I certainly get the sense, Sam, that that is incredibly rewarding for you and meaningful for you, and it's a great testament to the power that teachers have, and a good place to end this part of our conversation. Sam, you've been a fabulous guest here on Power Talk. We so appreciate your time. Thank you again, and thank you again for the work that you're doing with the students in middle school as part of the Minneapolis Public Schools.
Thank you.
We would like to remind you that if you would like more information about Minneapolis Public Schools, you can go online to their website at mpls.k12.mn.us. You'll find all Tower Talk episodes on our Prospect Park website at prospectparkchurch.org, and you can email us at prospectparkumc@gmail.com. My thanks to Angela Hayde-Vincent, the producer for Tower Talk, and of course to the entire team. I'm Dave Nyberg. We'll see you next time.